Talktainment Radio Worldwide South. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning and welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. You are now listening to the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., who is live from Washington, D.C. Talktainment Radio, radio the way it should be heard. If you would like to call in, the line is 1-877-932-9766. Mr. Fuller is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, which he will be explaining to you in the latter portion of this first hour. Today's subject will be justice in the system of racism, which is white supremacy. Let me start off by saying good morning. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
Okay. All righty. We're going to talk about justice today. Now, on page 184 of the Word Guide, you gave a compensatory definition of the word justice. Have you got that, page 184 of the Word Guide?
184?
Yes, sir.
Let me turn to it here.
Okay, good. To the radio audience, you will need your Word Guide and your regular counter.
I have it.
Okay. Under justice, I looked under justice according to Wikipedia, Merriam-Webster, and it wasn't very clear, but I looked under your definition that you penned on page 184 of the Word Guide. Could you read that under justice, what you wrote there, please, sir?
Say that again?
Could you read what you wrote?
Oh, 184.
Yes, sir.
The definition of the word, compensatory definition of the word justice.
Yes, sir.
And how to use it. It says, use this word to mean balance between people, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person who needs help the most gets the most help. Apply the word justice to a situation in which maximum consideration is given to factors associated with all of the 9 major areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, counter-war.
Okay. And then you said when others use this word, justice, ask for a...
I hear another voice.
Ask, okay. Let's see here. It says when others use the word justice, ask for a detailed explanation that you can easily understand. Now, in communicating with people, it is important that you easily understand what they're saying. So evidently, it appears that it could be that people do not understand words that people use, and I'm asking that as a question.
Say that again?
It could be that people don't understand the words that people use. I'm asking that as a question.
It could be that people don't understand the use of the word?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's just my definition. The definition of many dictionaries was vague to me. So I said it wasn't concise enough. It wasn't focused enough. So I came up with some years ago, back in the early 1980s, first of all, I called it balance between people, but that was too shallow. So later on, in the 1990s, I made a more explicit definition, and which I think will stand the test of time, and I think it makes more sense. It's more focused, it's more explicit, it covers enough just in those two semi-statements, you might say, or one statement, or two statements made into one. First of all, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated at any time in any area of activity. You have to guarantee that. That should be a guarantee in order to fulfill the first part of a description of what justice is. Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated in any area of activity. And in the second part, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most help. And I also add the term, probably in parentheses, or it could be underlined, constructive help. Now, a lot of people will claim that they need help, but the help that they claim they need is not constructive. So you want to always make sure that any help that you give to any person is real help. It's constructive help. It's not going to be the type of help that's going to solve one problem, but it's going to make two or three other problems, one or more other problems, in the process of trying to solve the first problem. Mm-hmm. Because that wouldn't be justice. So the composite of the definition is guaranteeing that no person is mistreated, and the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help at the time and place that he or she needs it, in every area of activity. Okay. Now, justice has never existed in recorded history, because there's never been a time, as far as I know about, unless I've been misinformed, in recorded history, that somebody wasn't being mistreated. And plenty of people were not getting the help that they needed, the constructive help that they needed. So I don't recall any time that I've read anything in elementary school, in high school, any time, in specialty schools, on jobs. I don't know of any situation where someone was not being mistreated, either directly or indirectly, and or someone or a whole host of people were not getting the help that they should have gotten. So I've never known a time or heard of a time, any place, anywhere on the planet, where justice has existed in recorded history, other than possibly, if you want to use the Bible as a format, what they call the King James Version of the Holy Bible. They say in the Garden of Eden, everything was completely in balance. There was no imbalance between people, presumably the two people who were there, Adam and Eve. But then, since then, even according to that recorded history, everything has been in disarray as far as the word justice is concerned. There has not been any justice nowhere for anybody in existence, because you've got to have a complete package. No such thing as partial justice. You either have it or you don't. You either have a situation where people are getting the help that they need, everybody, all of the help that they need, and you have to have a situation where no person, out of whether it's just 10 people or whether it's 40 trillion, no person anywhere is being mistreated for any reason in any area of activity. Now, that's a tall order. Yes. To get that type of thing, that type of arrangement. But that should be the aim of everybody on the planet 24/7. Okay. And if you don't have it, don't claim that you have it. No court should say, well, justice was served. No, it wasn't. You either have it or you don't.
Okay.
I mean, you don't measure it in increments like that. You only measure it when nobody's being mistreated anywhere. No person, because we're talking about justice, we're talking about balance between people.
Yes, sir.
No person is being mistreated, and all of the people who need constructive help are getting that constructive help. And when you pick up any newspaper, you can see right now in 2018, that absolutely is not true anywhere.
Okay. Let's do this. We have a phone call. What line is that? Line number 1? Okay. Line number 1. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. Are y'all aware that we can't hear the live stream at all on any format?
Yes. What is your question for Mr. Fuller, though?
Okay, all right. My question is from page number 36 of the compensatory code.
You mean the code. Okay.
In the revised edition.
Okay, revised.
136?
Yes, no, page 36, just 36.
36, okay.
Yes. Right there where you said racial white sacrifice confusion.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask, I read that, it's pretty self-explanatory. I just wanted to ask what we're seeing in the form of the school shootings, the shooting that we had, I think it was in Las Vegas, where most of the victims were predominantly white, and all the shootings that we have, the mass shootings, most of the victims are predominantly white. Is that part of what we're talking about right there as racial white sacrifice confusion? What is the goal of is it just to make it seem like white supremacy doesn't exist?
Oh, well, some white person might say that, presumably some white person, and some black person might say that, because a lot of people say that. Now, anything that seems like it's designed to make the system of white supremacy appear that it doesn't exist should be considered just that. That someone is doing something to make it look like it doesn't exist. All right? Or they confuse what the definition of the system of white supremacy is. And I think that that's what is going to be done in the future, because now more and more white people are beginning to use the term white supremacy. Now, I say to that, for the victims of white supremacy, look out. Because anytime I'm not talking about all white people, but some of the white people, if they use the term, they will start twisting that term, or they'll use that term in a fashion that takes all of the real truth out of it. They'll give it another definition. They'll start qualifying it by saying that white supremacy is something other than what the textbook of victims of white supremacy, written by me, in my opinion, is. See, they'll say that it's something else. They'll say that, well, you do have white supremacy, but it's not according to what you hear, the way you hear people use it. It's not within that context. So they will give it another context. I don't know what that might be, because they haven't done it yet. At least it hasn't come to my attention. But you can bet that they're probably working on it. Because once a white supremacist starts using a term that everybody else is using it, they will see to it that that term in some way will serve the system of white supremacy. Now, going back to the term that you use that's on page 36, racial white sacrifice confusion, what that usually means that white people, when they do anything against each other, they sort of register that in the minds of other people as a part of the confusion to show or to prove that white supremacy doesn't exist, because they'll say, well, white people are not victims of white supremacy, because white people fight each other and kill each other. But here's what. All of the history since the beginning of white supremacy. All of the recorded history shows that when the white supremacists fight among themselves, that's usually one of two things: a dress rehearsal for doing a great amount of harm to non-white people, or they are directly or indirectly, which they are always doing, fighting among themselves about how the system of white supremacy should run, just like any organized criminal organizations. Criminal organizations, so-called, fight among themselves about what? Not about going out of the business of being criminal organizations, but about how the business is going to be run. I mean, it's a family squabble about how the business is run. For example, plantation owners back in the old days, they would argue among themselves to the extent that sometimes they would become bitter enemies to each other, but not to the extent that the plantation system would be in jeopardy. Both of them are in the plantation business, having slaves. So they would fight about how the slaves are going to be treated, or how they are not going to be treated, or what type of work the slaves are going to be doing, and what kind of work the slaves are not going to be doing. Sometimes right there within what you might call the slave mansion, there was an argument between maybe a couple of brothers who are slave owners, but they would argue with each other and sometimes fight and have a duel maybe. It can come to just that, that type of head, that type of bitter end, where one brother actually slays the other brother, kills him in a duel, because they had dueling back in those days. Over what? Over how the plantation is being run. But that didn't benefit the slaves at all. One brother's dead, and the other one's still running the plantation. So they'll say, well, to each other, I'm sorry that I had to kill my brother or my cousin or whomever I had this partnership with. I mean, but that goes with the business sometimes of mistreating people. So you wind up mistreating each other. All right? But that's what we have to do when we're in this type of rotten business. The business is rotten itself. So all sorts of rotten things happen, and sometimes it comes back to haunt us because we are in a business that shouldn't exist in the first place. But that goes with the territory. Everybody, even today, in organized crime, as they call it, of course, the system of white supremacy is the biggest organized crime. But even today, what they call organized crime, the people who are dealing drugs, say, on a opium on a world scale, they sometimes go after each other and they kill each other about how the business is being run. But they do not want to go out of the business. They don't do that much damage to the business. So that's within the racial context. In order to maintain white supremacy, some white supremacists will do great harm to other white supremacists, but not to the extent that the system of white supremacy is put in jeopardy.
Okay.
Nobody wants that kind of war.
Okay. All right. What line? Line number one? Okay. We're going to take another call. Line number one, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, hi. How you guys doing?
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. My question, I have something I read about. I want to share with you guys. If you spell, but people wear their pants sagging. So if you spell that word sagging backwards, what does that spell?
Say that again.
The word sagging, like, how guys wear their pants sagging down?
Oh, sagging?
Yes, if you spell that word backwards, it spells niggas.
Oh, I never thought of that.
Yes.
I never thought of that. I never thought of that. Never even heard that.
Yeah, so backwards, that's what it's spelled. And also,
yeah, well, the audience is picking up on that now, so, well, there you have it, for whatever that means. BDQ.
And I also thought of the word blackmail. Like, for instance, like if a white person is caught doing something, they could be considered doing blackmailing, like basically saying they're blackmail like us. So, like, we're a crime in itself. I thought those words went under a code a lot about what you're speaking about. But I had a question. My question for Mr. Fuller is the fact that what if people aren't speaking in code anymore? Just like they're just going right to the action. They're not even dealing with thought of speech. They're just doing what they do, saying what they say.
No, your question is what?
My question is, what if people aren't even in code anymore as far as white supremacy? Like, what if they're just speaking and saying what they want to do just without hiding it now? And you've lived through that. I was just curious to know what you thought about how it could be now. Like, Trump doesn't seem like he's speaking in code. He's just saying what he wants to say.
Well, if I understand your question, you're asking if people are not using a counter-racist code. Well, that's self-evident.
No. I'm not. I understand. We definitely need to do that or do something. But I'm saying to you, what if the others aren't doing that, like the white supremacy? What if they're not going by a code anymore? Maybe they're just saying what they want to say and very blatantly.
What if other people are not going by a code anymore? Is that your question?
Yes.
They never did. Most people, we don't have a code. The victims of racism don't have a counter-racist code. If we had a counter-racist code, the system of white supremacy would be out of business, because that's what a code means.
Yes,
a counter-racist code would put racism out of business.
I guess the essence of my question, though, is not so much for us to get it and gain it. I'm saying if the white supremacy is more blatant and they don't speak in code words anymore, I'm saying how would we deal with that situation?
Oh, that's healthy. If you can figure out what the white supremacists are doing and how they are doing it. In the beginning of the book, it says what? If you do not understand the system of white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. Now, the white supremacists are successful at what they do because they know how to confuse their victims. Black people are extremely confused people all over the planet. We're confused about everything. And the confusion has driven us completely insane, which is what confusion does. Any person who is confused is insane. So we are an insane people, and we act like it because the white supremacists keep us that way. And they keep us that way by the things that they do and the things that they say. And they do and say these things in a manner that causes what? Confusion. And anybody who can...
The terminology.
Yes, sir. Any one person that can confuse another person can dominate that person that's confused. Why? Because the simple logic says what? The most confused person is the weakest person, is the person that you can now take advantage of. And who takes advantage of the confused person? A person who is not confused. A person who knows how to cause confusion among other people, and the other people don't know that they are being confused. And so that's just the way it works. The white supremacists understand that basic universal principle, and they use it to the hilt. And they are the most successful people in the history of the world who have ever done that. Dominate and control people and mistreat people through mass confusion. And every now and then somebody gets deconfused and steps out of line of confusion, you might say, and the white supremacy puts them back in their place or puts them in the grave. Because you can't control people if they're not confused. There's no way to do it.
Mm-hmm. That'd be about right. TalkTameRadio.com. is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's a couple that I'd like to share with you. This is Libby, and also Wiggins' World of Wellness. Now, these shows are exclusive to TalkTainmentRadio.com, and all you have to do is click on programs for the scheduled times. Talktainment Radio, radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby. I'm the co-host of The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., who is live from Washington, D.C. If you would like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766. Our question today is justice in the system of racism, which is white supremacy. Mr. Fuller, in some of my discussions this week, a question that came up with a predominant question was, how can justice be done in the prison system of racism, white supremacy?
It can't. You have to eliminate the system of white supremacy. And like I said, and I didn't finish a part of what I was saying just a few minutes ago.
Oh, okay.
Controlling people, yes, you have to, in order to do it smoothly, dominate and control people and misuse them, you have to keep them confused. Now, when you can't do that, this is the part that I didn't add. When you can't control them through the use of the mind, which means confuse the person, and you can control them and dominate them and mistreat them through confusion, then you have to use what? Brute force. And this is why the white supremacists, when they look at the vast numbers of non-white people on the planet, they say, we can't stand over everybody 24 hours a day with a gun. So we have to confuse them, in the mind. That's the best way. And we have to do it not in just one or two areas of activity. We have to do it in every area of activity 24/7. And what are these areas of activity? We have to confuse them, dominate them, and confuse them. In economics, going in alphabetical order, the 9 areas of activity. In economics, we have to dominate and confuse them in education, dominate and confuse them, have them doing all kinds of crazy things in the field of entertainment, making them think that they're doing something constructive that's helping them when it's something that's, if we have anything to do with it, it's something that's going to help to make them weak-minded and not problem solvers in the field of entertainment. And then labor, the other area of activity, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. We have to monitor these dark-skinned people, these people of color, all over the planet, and mistreat them. See to it, guarantee that they don't get justice in all of these areas of activity by dominating them and mistreating people of color, in all of the areas of activity through mass confusion. We have to use that. We can't stand over everybody 24 hours a day, each individual with a gun to their head saying, you better do this or you better do that or I'll blow your brains out. No. We have to be able to go to sleep, and they'll be operating on automatic. They'll be doing what we want them to do without us watching them at any time, because we got them trained, just like you train a dog, just like you train any animal, and have them doing all the things that we want them to do. But in order to do that, we have to do that through the use of mass confusion. Tell them what is valuable and what is not valuable. Tell them how to dress. Tell them what the fashions are. Tell them what they should learn and what's important. Give them guns and tell them who their enemy is, and train them in such a way through our fields of entertainment and whatnot to kill each other. All right? They look at a movie in the field of entertainment, the third area of activity. And when they turn on the television, see them killing each other all the time with the guns that we make available to them. Otherwise, we're not making any guns available to them if they're going to use them for any other purpose.
Okay.
So we will guarantee that when they turn on that television set, starting by age 5 or whenever it is, what they will see is one non-white person with an AK-47 or a 9mm pistol.
Okay.
And we'll glamorize it.
All righty.
We'll tell them to join gangs and all like that.
Yeah.
Slaughter each other. And then we can go to sleep. Because they're taking care of everything we want done. They're doing it for us.
All right. Hold that thought right there, Mr.
White supremacy.
Hold that thought right there, Mr. Fuller, and we'll pick it up. TalkTameRadio.com. I am Mr. Bobby. I'm the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And listen to this. Next month, September the 5th, or rather September, how about that? How about February the 5th? Conversate in the AM, hosted by Kahari, will be on, and also Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby. Now, these programs will be live, and we will be taking your calls and comments. So those two are coming back. And all you have to do is call 1-877-932-9766 to get in contact with those shows. Monday, February the 5th. How about that? And that's coming up real soon. Okay, Mr. Fuller, continue with that, and then I have a couple of questions and a Gmail to get to the subject. We're talking about justice in the system of racism, which is white supremacy. Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah, continue. We had to get those commercials in there, so go ahead now. Continue.
Oh, well, I had finished that.
Oh, okay. All right, now, on page, and thank you, on page 194 of the Word Guide, at the very bottom of the page, you mentioned this word laws in relation to justice. Page 194 at the bottom.
194.
Yes.
Okay.
Laws do not. Could you read that, please, sir?
All right. About law?
Yeah, laws do not.
Yeah, law. Use this word with caution.
Yes,
You're talking about the word law.
Yes,
correct?
And at the very bottom of the page, in relation to
the very bottom of the page,
yes,
it says laws do not necessarily produce justice.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, that's a flat statement. That's either true or false. Laws, there are a lot of laws, but laws change. But justice remains the same. Now, you can put that slogan into your mind. Laws change, but justice remains the same. Now, a law is what? Anything that people do is a law. I mean, you know, when you do it, and people do different things. So that doesn't necessarily mean that justice is being produced.
Okay.
Because you have to have, then you go to the definition of justice. A law really is anything that is done. Anything that is done is a law. If you pick up a pencil, that's the law of picking up a pencil. If you're driving a car, that's the law of driving a car, because there are certain laws that govern driving a car. Now, I'm not talking about traffic stops and all like that. I'm talking about just driving the car. That's a law. It's a law. Anything that is done by a squirrel, by a bird, is a law. Why? The bird is doing it. The squirrel is doing it. But justice is balance between people, which means what? Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated, and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, that's an absolute. But laws do not necessarily produce justice.
Okay.
Laws, which is that which is done, either will produce justice or they will not. You can have laws that don't produce justice at all. It does just the opposite. It works against justice. That's why, you know, when they had laws that said that, you know, black people sat on the back of the bus, was that justice? Well, people would say that, it's the law. So laws are associated with justice. So if you say that something is a law, you automatically got justice. No, you don't. That's why we had to have a compensatory definition, which is what I came up with one that I think will stand the test of time in the 1990s. I came up with one in the 1980s, balance between people, but that was very thin. That was weak. What do you mean, balance between people? What does that mean? But later on, in the early 1990s, I said I have to put some flesh on those bones of balance between people. So I came up with one that I think will stand the test of time, and if anybody comes up with one better, I will adopt it.
Yes.
Because we need a concise, razor sharp definition for the word justice.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I came up with one in the two parts that we have, that I present in the textbook for victims of racism and on all the programs. Justice is guaranteeing that no person is mistreated at any time in any area of activity, and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help.
Yes.
And
yes.
having given it that definition, that's a huge goal to strive for,
mm-hmm.
because justice, according to all the evidence, does not exist anywhere in the known universe.
Known universe, yes.
Right this minute in 2018.
Okay.
No place does justice exist.
Before we move on a little bit, there's one thing that I thought was very important that you said on page 195, and you put it in bold letters, and that was important. You said important. You said, you wrote, doing justice, you had that in quotations, requires the cooperation of the persons who are powerful enough, and that's in quotations, to do what is necessary to produce it. Could you explain that before we move on?
Yes, doing justice requires the cooperation of the persons who are powerful enough to do what is necessary to produce it. Now, who are the persons who are powerful enough right this minute on the planet when it comes to the subject of racism to do justice, or when it comes to any other subject? They are, unfortunately, people who practice racism.
Racism, yes.
They are the most powerful people on the planet. Those white people, not talking about all white people, I want to emphasize that, but those white people who have chosen to participate in the practice of racism, which is white supremacy, are the smartest and most powerful people on the planet Earth in the year 2018. Now, that statement is either true or false. I say it's true based on what? Based on evidence. And they are in position, the people who are powerful enough to practice justice or non-justice, or the people who believe in and who practice white supremacy. And you're going to have their cooperation if you're going to get it right now, because they're the most powerful people. You have to have their cooperation, or they have to go, and in the process, in order to have their cooperation, they have to go out of business as white supremacists.
Okay.
So that's what makes the task so difficult.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Because they're the most smartest, most powerful people on the planet. So we have to come up with a code that will change that situation.
Okay.
Either by persuading them to change, or, logically speaking, by we have an all-out war in which they are the losers, or they exterminate all of the people that they have under them right now. Because if the white supremacists decide to get rid of all the non-white people on the planet by killing us, they are powerful enough to do it, according to all the evidence, right this minute. And then they'll have the whole universe to themselves, all right? But they won't have white supremacy, because white supremacy will have gone out of business, because it's just like you're not in the poultry business, you know, killing chickens for people to eat, unless you got chickens. I mean, that's just self-evident logic. If you're running a poultry business and you raise chickens, you feed them, you house them, you see to it that they are healthy, then you kill them and you eat them. But if you kill them and eat all of them and all of their eggs, what will you not have? You will not have a poultry business anymore. So it's the same with the system of white supremacy. And why did I interject that? It's because some black people say that the white supremacists are aiming to kill all of the black people on the planet. Well, if they kill all the black people, all of the non-white people, shades of black people, black, brown, red, yellow, and have nothing but white people left on the planet, they'll be out of the business of white supremacists because there are no non-white people in existence. We'll be gone. Now, people have asked me about that. Well, what if they're planning to do that? I say, so what? You keep planning on putting them out of business as white supremacists and replace that system with a system of justice so that no people, non-white people or white people, are mistreated, and all of them, white and non-white, get the constructive help, underline the word constructive, that all people should have, which is how, logically speaking, it should have been in the first place.
Okay.
Before racism was ever invented. Okay. But if the white supremacists decide right today and announce they're going to kill all of the non-white people on the planet, what should the codified response be? Go to it. Do it.
Alrighty.
Why? Because you tell them to go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it. They'll say, if we go ahead and do it, you'll be gone. I say, well, that's right. If you do it, because you got the muscle to do it. But you won't be fighting us. You'll be fighting whatever put us here.
Okay.
All right? So that's the way the compensatory code says to look at it.
Alrighty.
That's the logical way to look at it.
All right. TalkToHim@radio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkToHim@radio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. You can get in contact with the show by calling 1-877-932-9766. Mr. Fuller, before we take this call, this is a spot where we need you to briefly discuss your book so that we can get that information out and then take this call. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
You can get the basic textbook and also the word guide that we've been reading from, if you prefer to get that book too. They're all really one book, but I just couldn't get it all in between two covers. It would be too heavy to carry around and all like that. So I tried to put all of the basic material in one book, and I call that the basic book, which is the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code. And then the other volume is a Compensatory Counter-Racist Codified Word Guides. There's nothing in this word guide except just words that we've been reading from this morning about how to use them, how not to use them, and most of all, what questions to ask when other people use the words, or at least lead them to the questions, or at least ask questions about what a person means when he or she uses any of these words that are in this book. Now, I don't have all the words that's in the English language. I don't have nowhere near enough of them, but I do have a substantial number so that when a person reads the book, and it's a pretty thick book, that they get an idea of what to do about all words, including all the thousands of words that are not in the book, when they don't have what? Clear definitions. Because there are many words that have very, very confusing definitions in the English language. Now, the basic book and the word guide, the basic book meaning all the things you can do, all the things not to do, what to look for, what white supremacy is, all the explanations, I hope, of how it works and whatnot, basic explanations, that's in the basic book. But one or the other book, or both books, both volumes can be gotten by going to producejustice.com.
Alrighty.
That's producejustice.com. And the volumes are written for the individual person to use on a day-to-day basis. The individual person meaning whom? Victims of white supremacy. People who perceive themselves to be victims of the system of white supremacy. If you don't perceive yourself to be a victim of white supremacy, the books do not apply to you.
All
But
righty.
you can get them by going to producejustice.com. A lot of people sometimes keep asking me, how do I get the book? I say producejustice.com. Go to producejustice.com. And everything that you need to know about how to get the book is there.
All righty. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Line number one. Okay, line number one. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. I have two questions. Mr. Fuller, we are going into so-called Black History Month. Can you please explain why that term Black History is illogical?
Well, I don't know if it's illogical or not. Black people do have a history, so I can't approach it from that viewpoint. I will tell you what I say, that when people ask me what is my history in a codified manner, and people can use this because this is in the book, the textbook for victims, you just simply say, my history is everything that ever happened before the beginning of time and since. And that is the truth. Because nothing is supposed to be in a counter-racist code that is not true. You don't make untruthful statements. The white supremacists are masters of falsehood. We use just the opposite. If you're going to counter white supremacy, you have to go with the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so years ago, when people got to arguing back and forth about, Black history, what is it, how far back does it go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, what exactly is Black history? And I just simply say, well, I'm a person, first of all, and so the question is, the logical question, what is a person's history? All right? Even before I get to the black part, what is any person's history? And I came up with a logical answer, and I give that as my whole history. When people ask me, what is your history, Fuller? I say, my history is everything that ever happened before the beginning of time, because time did have a beginning, I guess, and since the beginning of time, unquote. You got all of my history right there. Everything that ever happened, every rock that ever turned over on some planet, every star that ever fell out of the sky, every blade of grass that ever grew in a forest is Neely Fuller Jr.'s history. Why? Because it's in the universe that I'm in, or in all the universes. A lot of people say that this is not the only universe. There are trillions of them out there. All right? That's all a part of my history. Why? Because I'm here. That's why. And all of these things, anything that happened before me is my history.
Okay. Quickly.
And anybody who says that's not true is not telling the truth.
Okay. What is your second question, caller? Quickly.
Yes, sir. And can you please explain the importance of going back and trying to correct the mistakes we made in codifying ourselves?
Oh, yes. That's what I say the study of history should be. And this is important. And it's excellent that you brought this up, because I want to talk about this. History and bragging. Somehow many people got in the habit of looking at history as something to brag about. There's nothing to brag about in anybody's history. Why? Because the world, as far as recorded history is concerned, has never been the type of world that it should have been, except with the possible exception of what they say in the beginning, in what they call the King James Version of the Bible. They say is in the beginning, when the first people appeared on the planet, presumably Adam and Eve were their names, that everything was perfect. There was no non-justice, because you had balance between people, balance between those two people. It was just two people here, So they say, all right, so there was balance, and these people were also in harmony with their environment. See, they were here on the planet Earth. So the King James Version of what they call the Holy Bible says in a chapter called Genesis. So I understand. So I've been told. I don't know. I wasn't there. So I'm not saying it's true one way or the other. I'm just saying everything was perfect then. But since then, since that era, nothing has been the way that it ought to be, so I've been told. And there's plenty of evidence of that. Now, I have witnessed that myself, and I have never encountered anybody who has told me that they've been in a place that you could actually brag about based on what? Nobody being mistreated, and everybody who needed constructive help got it. Now, I don't know of any such place on Earth, on this planet, because you have to have it on the entire planet, by the way, simultaneously. Nobody being mistreated in order to have justice, because justice, you can't have justice in one place and have non-justice in another place. That's not the equation. That's not the way you measure justice. You can't have injustice or non-justice any place. So anytime you have anybody being mistreated anywhere, then you don't have justice, which means you don't have any history to brag about. And in recorded history, I've never even heard of a place other than the place that I just named, the Garden of Eden, they called it. I've never even heard of a place. And there was another place, I don't want to miss anything. They say there's a place called heaven, but I'm talking about here on the planet Earth. Now, in a place called heaven, wherever that is, they say everything is perfect. There's no such thing as anything going on in heaven that's not perfect. That's not the way it absolutely ought to be. But everything on the planet Earth in recorded history that is going on adds up to being sum total, not the way it ought to be. So we're talking about history now. Is there a time that, other than what I just cited, that on this place called Earth, that people had anything that they could brag about as being the way it should be? Mm-hmm. And the answer is no.
Alrighty.
So history should not be used to brag.
Alrighty.
But you're correct, sir. I just want to fast forward right now to the answer to the question. Oh. You're correct. When history should be used for one purpose only, to study, to find out where all of the mistakes were made and all of the mistakes that we're making now that need to be instantly corrected right this minute.
Okay.
Every last one of them.
We're going to have to wrap that one up, but stay tuned for the second hour. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio, and radio the way it should be heard. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again on the second hour.
You got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning and welcome to the second hour of The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio, and that is TalkTainmentRadio.com. I'm Mr. Bobby. I'm the co-host. Mr. Neely Fuller is on the line. And again, this is radio the way it should be heard. If you would like to join the conversation, you can by calling 932-9766. You can Gmail me at the numeral 7, MrBobby@gmail.com. I will try to get to those. So far, I've not been able to, but I will try to get to those. You can also view the program in its entirety on Facebook.com/Talktainment. You can get it there. And also, you can do this. You can view the program, that is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. All you have to do is go to YouTube, type in the word Talktainment, then hit the space bar and type in the word radio. Scroll down to Talktainment number 2 live on YouTube, and you're there. And while you are there, hit that subscribe button and that like button, and you'll be glad you did. Okay, since this is the second hour, this is the donation hour. We're coming up on that. Probably in the next couple of weeks, where we will again this year, for the third consecutive year, seek donations. We have some reoccurring sponsors: Brian Gadsden, Eric Williams, B.W. Gifts, Helen Nance, and Don Mishner. Then they give every month, so we'd like to thank you for doing that. But we probably have others that do the same thing. So if you like your name called, like many people do, just donate a portion every month, or just a one-time donation. All you have to do is go to the TalkTimeRadio.com homepage, click on the donate button for this second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Fuller. You like it because you have donated, so we thank you for that. Okay. Oh, this is important. Listen to this. Some of you will like this. Coming up next month on February the 5th on TalkTimeRadio.com, 2 programs are returning, and that is Conversate in the AM with Kahari, and also the latest in the world of sports talk, hosted by yours truly, Mr. Bobby. Now, these programs will be live and taking your calls and comments by calling 1-877-932-9766. That's coming up on February the 5th. That's on a Monday. So, yeah, we're going to do that. Okay, Mr. Fuller is live on the line. We've been talking about justice in the system of racism, which is white supremacy. If you missed the first hour, it will be up so you can get that. Mr. Fuller, on, let's see here. I got all these papers in front of me. But there was something on how to use this book, the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. And I thought it was kind of interesting. You talk about the book every week that we are on the air, but on the preface, you have on page 12 of the preface, you have 11 suggestions on how to use this book. The first one, you said, think seriously about everything that you read herein. And then you said, speak and or act only in support of those observations and or suggestions that you believe will most likely help to reveal truth, produce justice, and produce correctness. And then number 3, you have, and you had this underlined, use logic. Choose carefully. Think about cause and effect. Do not think, speak, and or act according to any part of this book unless you think that doing so will produce a constructive effect. You have 8 other suggestions on there. The importance of reading the preface and reading before you get into this book. You know, you formed that. You know, what was the emphasis to explain that to people?
Well, because the book is written in such a way that many people, I guess, might try to pick it up and read it like it's a novel or a traditional textbook of some type. I didn't start out to write a book to start with. It was just a bunch of notes that I was writing to myself about how to get things done, how to get through the day. So I wanted to continue that theme because that's what I was doing. I was using my own writings just to get through the day and interacting with people. When this happens, when that happens, what do you do? What do you say? What is it that you make sure that you don't say or don't do? And I had to learn a lot from experiences, and most of it from observing other people. And I would just look at people and I would say, well, that didn't work out too well for what that person did. And why didn't it work out too well? So I analyzed what I saw going on around me. And I said, well, now, if that didn't work too well, maybe something else should have been done. But something else like what? And so I had to think about that. And so that's how I came up with the idea of a code, that every person walking around on the planet should be functioning according to a code, regardless of who that person is or where they happen to be. A code of what? Just a code of action that will come out, that will produce the best possible result. In other words, why not do the best thing that will work for you? The best thing that will work for you without harming other people unjustly. Okay? And that's what everybody on the planet should be doing 24/7. And everything will work smoother, you might say. So I was trying to work out something for myself as an individual, and then I started talking to other people about it over a period of time. And they say, well, where do you get these ideas? I say, well, the ideas are my own. They say, oh, well, some of that stuff you say sounds pretty good. I think I might use it. So that's when I got the idea that I started calling it. I didn't call it a code in the beginning.
Yes.
And I kind of got the idea that, hey, you know, everything that works is codified. Plumbing works better when it's codified. When you do it in a certain way, and you do that way every time, you find the best way to do it, and then that's how you do it.
Yes, sir.
Putting up a building code.
Yeah.
You know, like building inspectors, they tell me, come around and look, and they say, this building is not up to code.
Following a blueprint.
Yes, and a person will say, well, what do you mean the building ain't up to code? And someone will say, well, and what does it mean? Well, who cares if the building ain't up to code? Well, you should care, because it means that the way this building is built, and I understand there's a building somewhere in the country right now. It's an excellent building, but someone made a mistake in calculating the foundation under the building, in examining the foundation. And I understand this tall building, a very expensive building, is beginning to lean now. I saw that on television about 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
The building is slightly, they say, well, you can't tell it just by looking at it, but you can go down in the basement of this building and you can check the cracks in the walls and all like that. This building is slowly coming apart.
Yes, in San Francisco.
Yeah, we're going to have to, okay. And if we don't do something about it, I mean, this building eventually is going to topple over.
Yes.
It's just going to fall over. All right, so we've got to get to work. Somebody made a miscalculation.
Yes, sir.
So what was the miscalculation? It meant it wasn't up to code. Someone didn't come up with the correct code for the foundation. The rest of the building is fine, but the foundation of the building was not codified.
All righty.
So people like that building should be codified so that everything always works for you. Nothing works against you.
Mm-hmm.
Everything like what? Everything like what you say and what you do. Because everything among people is saying and doing. So if what you say every day on your job and everything like that works for you and not against you, because you have a code that you use, then the job should be smooth. It should be a smooth day at the job every day. Because what you say plus what you do is done in such a codified or orchestrated way, like a well-tuned engine or a well-tuned orchestra, then you have a smooth day at the office or at the factory or in the fields or wherever you happen to be. Because everything that you said worked for you, not against you.
Okay.
And everything that you did worked for you, not against you.
All righty.
So suppose you had a code for every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment. The way you entertain yourself always worked for you, not against you. Labor, law, politics, your religion worked for you, never against you. sex worked for you, not against you. You engage in a sex act. It always worked for you, never against you. And it didn't cause chaos for somebody else. Because there's a saying that goes along that's codified, and a very important part of the code. Because the code is supposed to be about what? Problem solving. But you solve problems without doing what? Without making any. Solve problems without making problems. And that means that requires quite a bit of thinking. You can solve one problem sometimes, but you don't know it, that you're in the process of making 2 or 3 other problems that you are going to have to solve, or somebody's going to have to solve. So that's not what you want.
Okay.
Solve problems without making any.
Okay.
And that should be what a code for each individual on this planet right now in 2018 should be about.
All right.
Solve problems without making any.
Let's go to the Gmails here. This comes from Sister Anita. She said, Mr. Fuller, you often quote, help those that need the most help. When I think of storybooks like The Little Red Hen, which is about working hard and reaping the benefits, and also about those that choose not to work hard and therefore do not reap benefits, I ask myself, while under the system, if white supremacy, I've worked hard in a factory full-time for 16 years while going to college part-time, raised my children and family, made many sacrifices to help myself to where I am at today. My question is, Mr. Fuller, why should anyone help any person that has not applied themselves, and how that they are without because they goofed off or didn't take life seriously and didn't work hard? Should they be helped?
Well, that's covered in the code book, and that's also covered by just what you call this common logic, you might say, or logic itself. Every person, even a baby, tries to help itself. A baby tries to stand up in the crib. I mean, even when you're trying to keep the baby in the crib, the baby is trying to figure out how to get out of the crib because the baby doesn't like being caged. Once the baby becomes aware that the crib is a crib and that the baby is able to get out and do things that the baby can see other people doing, they see other creatures moving around that are not confined to that small space. So that's just a natural urge. Now, the white supremacists kill that natural urge in non-white people because they want non-white people to just sit in a corner until the white supremacists come along and tell them what to do and beat them into making them do it, all right, for the convenience of the white supremacists. That's what white supremacy is all about, okay? But people should have the incentive to help themselves. Now, if a person doesn't have the incentive, then you start with what they got. They don't have the incentive. So you try to inspire them simply by talking to them, asking them to do something other than what they're doing, which is what I do on this program. Do something other than what you're doing if what you're doing is not constructive. And I want people to always tell me when I'm doing something that's non-constructive. I really appreciate that. Even if I don't act on it immediately, out of habit, out of laziness, I want to be told what I should be doing, the best thing that I should be doing, in order to get what? The best result for me. Because when you're doing something constructive and it works for you, because if it doesn't work for you, it's not constructive anyway. It should work for you. It should work for anybody who believes in doing constructive things. So every creature, every ant, every bird, every rhinoceros, every crocodile should be doing something constructive and solving problems without making any. That includes crocodiles, even though the people will say, well, the crocodiles don't do anything constructive for anybody else but itself. Well, that's on account of the environment, maybe. that over millions of years people have made for the crocodile. Crocodiles probably at one time weren't considered something to be afraid of, but they got to be something to be afraid of, like people got to be something to be afraid of by things that people do. Throwing things out of balance. When you throw one thing out of balance, the trees, the air, the rocks, the mountains, the oceans, when you pollute things, when you have so-called food intake that's incorrect, or you stick needles in your arms that have stuff that does things that it shouldn't do, might appear to be doing things that it should do, but that's just an appearance. Lots of things, lots of fruit, lots of things that look like fruit shouldn't be eaten by people because it's not for people. They tell me there's a difference between a so-called toadstool that I was told when I was very young and out in the country. They look alike, a so-called toadstool, whatever that meant, but it looks like a mushroom. But there's a difference. They look alike, but one is deadly and one is nourishing. And there are a lot of things on the planet that are like that, including every person that you look at, because we all carry poison now. We can't be anything other than a poisonous people in the system of white supremacy.
Okay.
White people are completely poisoned, and black people are completely poisoned. We are poison creatures, almost to the nth degree. Why? Because of a system that is absolutely corrupt when it comes to people being what they ought to be.
All righty. TalkTainmentRadio.com is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's a couple I'd like to share with you. One is Pastor O Speaks. You can join Orlinda W. Hawkins Brinkley. She breaks it down for you. And also, how about This is Libby? Just tremendous in the field of wellness. So check those particular programs out. All you have to do is go to TalkTainmentRadio.com, click on programs for the scheduled times. Here on TalkTainmentRadio.com, that's radio the way it should be heard. I'm Mr. Bobby. I'm the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Today's discussion is about justice in the system of racism and white supremacy. If you missed the first hour, you need to go back and get that and hear that and see how that may apply to you. And if you'd like to get in contact with the show, you can do so by calling 1-877-932-9766. Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. You can listen to the rebroadcast of the program by going to facebook.com/talktainment. And you can do it there. And you can now watch the live show by going to YouTube, type in the word Talktainment, then hit the space bar and type in the word radio. Scroll down to Talktainment 2 live on YouTube, and you're there. Hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll be glad you did. Okay, let's go to the Gmails. This comes from, my brother here, Brother Palmer. He says this, Mr. Fuller, you have said that self-respect means telling yourself the truth even when it hurts, and making the declaration to yourself and anyone else around you that you will tell the truth. Mr. Fuller, how can a non-white person who is subject to the global business system of racism, which is white supremacy, and to the practitioners of white supremacy who are classified as white, be truthful?
I didn't quite get that question.
Okay, he said, how can
what's the essence of the question?
He said, how can a non-white person who is subject to the global business of the system of racism, which is white supremacy, and to the practitioners of white supremacy who are classified as white, how can they be truthful? How can a person be truthful in that system?
Oh, everybody has. If you have access to the truth about something, and if you know that the sun is shining, you tell people the sun is shining. The sun is out today. It's not raining here today. I mean, and you just say it. You just speak the truth. And if a person says, well, I don't want you to talk to me because I don't think the sun should be shining today, and I don't want to hear you say that. Well, you just take the first thing that they said. They don't want you to talk to them, so you don't talk to them. You know, you're not looking for a fight. You already got a fight, all right? So every day you try to avoid escalating any type of hostility. If you can, you avoid that as best you possibly can, particularly when you're talking to white people or non-white people. I mean, you avoid conflict. You're trying to get rid of all conflict.
Yes.
Okay? And you make that clear. Now, if people are combative and all like that, these are people that you want to steer clear of, or in the case of non-white people and of white people, you just simply say what the code says, I will talk to you at some other time. If they're just being combative, if they're name-calling and act like they want to fight and all like that, you don't say that you'll cut off communications, because you do. You're here on the planet, you got to communicate. You're not here on this planet by yourself. You got to communicate with somebody, but if somebody you're communicating with, maybe that person can change at another time when they are not combative, if they are not destructive and whatnot. So the code says, I will talk to you at some other time.
Okay.
You know, you just tell the person that. I will talk to you. You know, you listen to everything they have to say, including all the names they call you. I mean, the person's calling you a bunch of names, it's one right behind another, talking about your mother or whatever. You listen to that. I mean, you know, always listen to what a person is saying. I mean, they're coming from their point of view. Not from your point of view, they're coming from their point of view. That's the code. So you can listen. I can listen to anything that anybody says. I don't care what it is. I can listen. And then when they finish, I will make an assessment as to what they said is either constructive or non-constructive. And if it doesn't seem like I can engage in a conversation now that's going to lead to a constructive result, I will say, sir or ma'am, I will talk to you at some other time. That's your intention. You may never talk to them again, ever. But that's your intention if they're going to be here on the planet with you. Because while they're here on the planet with you, they may make some type of problem for you. So you can at least say, I will talk to you at some other time. But you're implying that the talk is not going anywhere right now.
Okay.
Because all they're doing is jumping up and down and screaming and cursing and name-calling.
Okay.
That's on a job or inside of a house or with your your chosen mate or your cousin or with the so-called boss or your boss on a job or somebody you're on a bus with and struck up a conversation with. Just politely say, I will talk to you some other time, and if the person is being hostile in the way that they're talking, then put distance between you and the person.
Okay.
You don't want to escalate. You don't go toward the person. You go away from the person.
All righty.
And that's code.
That's code. Okay, well, he goes on to say, now this is being truthful. He says, when the victims of racism have no power to enforce the truth, is this reality? He says, I have spoken to too many refined white supremacists who they say that justice and injustice can occur simultaneously. He said, Mr. Fuller, after reading your book under compensatory logic, which is cause and effect, this is not possible.
And you say that. If that, you always say what is true. You say you can't have justice and non-justice on the same planet at the same time. That's impossible. Because what is justice? Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. As we speak right now, you can pretty well guarantee that somebody's being mistreated somewhere. All right? I mean, that even you don't even have to look out the window very long to see, you might see somebody just walking down the street, whomever that is. That person probably is not getting the help that he or she needs. And if you would ask them, you would just run down the street and catch them and strike up a conversation with them. And they would, and ask that person, are you getting all the help that you need? All of the constructive help that you need? And that lady would say, well, how much time do you got? I mean, because we might have to sit down somewhere and talk. Because I can probably spend 2 or 3 days telling you about all the help that I need. All right? I think the average person would say that. The list of things that people, constructive help that people need, is usually pretty substantial. Some people's needs the list is shorter than others. And they'll say it's a short list. Oh, I got just about everything that I need. All the constructive help that I need. All the people around me are always trying to help me. I mean, they're looking for ways to help me. All right? So, oh, no, I'm doing just fine except for. All right? But
Okay.
When you ask the person standing next to him, you might say, well, now, hey, his situation is nowhere near like mine. And so they got a long list. In fact, while you're asking the questions, some of the things that you need might be on their list, too.
Okay. I got to leave it there right now, Mr. Fuller. TalkToHimAtRadio.com. We go where you go. Check us out on 94.1 WGRN. Podcasts are available. Download the TalkToHimAtRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. Stay right the way it should be heard. Hi, I'm Mr. Bobby, the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and we have been discussing justice in the system of racism, white supremacy. And if you'd like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 1-877-932-9766. You can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. You can also go to facebook.com/talktainment to listen, to hear the program in its entirety. And let's see, you can also do this. You can listen and look at the program live by going to YouTube TV. Then type in the word Talktainment, hit the space bar, and then type in the word radio. Scroll down to Talktainment 2 live on YouTube, and you're there. Hit the subscribe button and the like button, and how about all that? Okay, Mr. Fuller, speaking of justice, a question came up here, and this is the question here. It says, in the system of racism, which is white supremacy, if justice cannot be obtained at no time, then why try to achieve something that is not attainable? After all, if a war cannot be won, then why fight it?
Excellent question. Now, a lot of people say it can't be. Someone told me years ago, said, Fuller, you might as well give up. The race problem cannot be solved. It can only be discussed. And I thought about that. But then I came to a conclusion. If a problem cannot be solved, it's not logical to discuss it, other than discuss it just by simply saying the problem can't be solved. But I came to the conclusion, now this is strictly my conclusion, anything that people put together in the system of white supremacy is put together by people. People can take it apart. It's just a matter of knowing how it's put together and having the will and the skill to take it apart. And that's what I've tried to do with the textbook of Victim of White Supremacy. I always tell people, I'm not trying to make a contribution to trying to solve a problem that can't be solved. I believe it can be solved. I believe we haven't been really seriously working on it and solving it. And so if black people haven't been working on trying to solve the race problem, what have they been doing? They've been succumbing to it, going along with it. And in going along with it, what have we made a priority? I ask myself that. What has been my priority most of the time I've been on the planet? I mean, what do I think about most of the time? And I discovered by watching my own actions and watching the actions of other black people, particularly here in the Northwestern Hemisphere, and in places that I heard about, I mean, overseas and whatnot, among black people all over the world, black people spend most of their time, obviously to me, I could be incorrect about it, doing what? Showing off to each other. And when that's a priority, and you have a problem like racism that's dominating your every move, and getting rid of racism is not your priority in your existence, then that racism, by being not your priority, stays in place until it goes out of business on its own, meaning the white people decide we're just not going to practice racism anymore, or until they are forced to go out of business. Now, so far, neither one of those two things has happened.
Have you failed?
And say that again?
I said, then have you failed in that quest?
Far, yes. Oh, yeah, failed miserably. Because black people, as a whole, are still doing what? More than anything in the world, black people get up in the morning and go to bed at night thinking about, truth be told, unless I am making a big mistake, more than anything, doing things to impress each other, to impress other black people all over the so-called continent of Africa. Black people, tribal chiefs, trying to impress other tribal chiefs. And so when you have that as a priority, and your priority is not to rid the world, the entire world, of racism, if that's not your everyday priority, and replace it with a system of justice, then the system of white supremacy will remain in place unless the white supremacists decide, well, we're tired of this, let's do something else. Let's get rid of racism on our own and try another format for doing the world's business.
Okay.
But right now, among the victims of racism, they're just strutting around like peacocks, trying to get another hairdo, another tattoo, another earring, another high five, another dress style, a little bit more money, to do what? Run all over the place, showing off to other black people. Look at me. I'm all that.
Okay.
And the white supremacists look at that and say that's exactly what we want them to do forever.
Okay. Larry on the Gmail wrote this. What should my codified behavior be when I attend workshops that are facilitated by a black coworker who intentionally conducts the workshop in a manner that diverts the discussion away from talking about white supremacy? This black coworker was recruited by a white coworker to co-facilitate the workshops, but the white coworker lets the black coworker do all the talking. By the way, I informed this black coworker of your recordings and book, but the black coworker never acknowledged it. Should I stop attending, or should I ask questions that will lead to the truth, but will, quote, rock the boat, end of quote, and put me in conflict with the other black victim? Larry.
Well, since I have gone to meetings myself, I went to meetings, first of all, to learn what the meeting was about. And I have, most of the time just been quiet and tried to learn what is being said. But what I would do now, if I went to any meeting, I would say, what is the objective of this meeting? What's the purpose of the meeting? Meetings are supposed to have purposes. What's the purpose of the meeting? And if the purpose of the meeting isn't to solve a problem, Because what I want to hear, if the meeting is going to be anything about race, I will ask the logical question. I won't make statements. Stay away from statements. Statements, you get more arguments from statements than you do from questions. Just ask a series of questions. And I would ask, what is this meeting for? And if someone says the meeting is to end racism, I say, all right, I want to hear what is going to be said about ending racism. Now, if the meeting is about something else, I want it understood right from the day one, from moment one. What is this meeting for? In other words, after this meeting is over, what is it that we should have accomplished at the end of this meeting? Otherwise, I have a question. What is this meeting for? The same question I had when I walked in. What was this meeting for? What is the meeting for when I walk in? And when I walk out, what was the meeting for? Because if the meeting didn't accomplish what it was set out to do, why have the meeting? That's my next question. And why have any other meetings if you can't accomplish what the meeting is for? Because that's what you call, logically speaking, wasted time when you don't have a reason for having the meeting and a goal for what that meeting is supposed to accomplish.
Okay. All righty. Let's do this. TalkTimeAtRadio.com. We go where you go. You can download the TalkTimeAtRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. We've been talking about justice today in this system, which is a system of racism, which is white supremacy. If you have any questions, you may do so. The phone lines are open, 1-877-932-9766. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. You can hear the program in its entirety by going to facebook.com/Talktainment, and also you can view and hear the program by going to YouTube TV. Type in the word Talktainment, then hit the space bar, type in the word radio, scroll down to Talktainment number 2, live on YouTube. You are there, and hit the subscribe button and the like button. And when you do that, if you go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, we're coming up on our donation hour or donation time in the next few weeks. You'll hear more about that. But you can do that now if you want to. Any amount of donation you want to donate to the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, do so. You'll be glad you did. We have a few reoccurring guests, donors, Brian Gaston, Eric Williams, BW Gifts, Helen Nance, and Don Mentioner are just a few of the reoccurring donors to the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Fuller, and we do thank you. Speaking of that, Mr. Fuller, this is the time that we donate to your book, so take it away.
Or you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. 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 That's how you get the book. What will come up on the screen is a brief description of the basic textbook. And there's 2 volumes there. One is what I call the basic textbook. It comes under the title of A Compensatory Counter-Racist Code. That's right there in the center of the book. At the top of the book is the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. But that's not as explicit. That doesn't explain very much. But the center, that's why I had several titles on the cover of the book. I have 3, really. The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. But then in larger letters in the center of this volume, I have a compensatory counter-racist code, meaning that it's to make up for the code that we don't have, or any way of formalized way of going about thinking, speaking, and acting for victims of white supremacy, which you'll see in smaller print right down near the bottom of the cover of the book. A textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action. For whom? For victims of white supremacy.
Yes, sir.
And white supremacy is racism, racism is white supremacy. And then the other volume, which is just an extension, of the basic book is called a compensatory codified word guide, counter-racist codified word guide, to help you to use words in such a way that they work for you, not against you, in dealing with racism, anything associated with racism, or with people in general, in dealing with any situation that you encounter. And it's supposed to help the individual person, both volumes. You can get one or the other volume. Most people get the basic book, and that's the one that I recommend first, for sure, because the second book won't mean very much without the second one. But the first one stands alone on its own. Even the 1984 version of the first one is still good. Those who still have it, don't get rid of that book if you still have it, because even without getting the updated, revised, expanded edition, you can just hold on to the other edition. I might even get it reprinted. Some people have told me that I should, and I'm thinking about doing that. But right now, you can go to producejustice.com and get one or the other or both of the basic textbooks for victims of white supremacy.
All righty.
Producejustice.com.
Okay. Two questions here, Mr. Fuller. This comes from JL. I'll read hers first. It says, Mr. Fuller, are you familiar with the Marvel comic superhero Black Panther? Do you think that seeing his film about a fictional African king living in a technologically advanced country that was never colonized is a constructive activity for a care unit? And are you interested in seeing the Black Panther movie?
I am interested in seeing it, but probably not right away, because I got a long list of movies that I haven't seen that I think that I ought to see, because I've been told. I've been told to see the movie Get Out for sure, and see what I think about that. I haven't seen it. In fact, the last movie I saw didn't have any black people in it at all that I could see, and it was a war movie called Dunkirk, and I didn't get a lot of lessons out of that. I thought the technology was, and probably the storyline was probably, in a way of speaking, probably more or less accurate, because I always look for accuracy in anything that's supposed to be based on history,
okay,
which you're not going to get very much of. But I thought that maybe the way the movie was handled, the story was done. But I didn't get very many lessons.
Okay.
When you look at a movie, try to find out what the lessons are that you can use, something you can apply.
Okay.
And I haven't seen the movie yet, Black Panthers.
Black Panther.
But I intend to see it in order to learn at some point. And I will look for the lessons, and any constructive lessons that are in there. If there's no constructive lessons in there, in my opinion, I'll say so, because I usually pick out the movies that I think are going to stand the test of time as far as the number of lessons that people should learn, particularly victims of white supremacy.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question about that, too, but this question came up here. Churches in the system of racism and which is white supremacy, with the warden being the prison master, how can they or do they practice justice? Because they have to do what the warden permits.
With the warden being the prison masters, how can the
justice
how can the prisoners do what?
Practice justice.
They can't. You can only try to practice justice. You don't have justice until you get it. And you can't get it as long as you have the prison system called the system of white supremacy. But you are always supposed to be working toward getting it. That's just it. I mean, hey, everybody so far who has come and gone, everybody who has come and worked trying to get justice and died, they died without ever getting justice, not ever experiencing what it's like. No one has ever experienced what justice is like. We've never had a situation in recorded history where no one was mistreated. And the people, all of the people, without exception, who needed constructive help, got that constructive help. I don't know of any situation where that has ever existed. And so it cannot exist as long as you have the system of white supremacy. That's an absolute. Why? The system of white supremacy is designed to continue non-justice on a huge scale, on an infinite scale. It's deliberately designed. Nothing in the system of white supremacy is designed to produce justice. That's why, if it was designed to produce justice anywhere along the line, then there wouldn't be any point in getting rid of it.
Okay. Well,
so you're in the prison, so you're working to get rid of the prison, not to get out of the prison, because there's no way to get out of the prison. You have to get rid of the prison.
Okay. Then does that mean, and this is the question I'm asking, does that mean that because the warden allows churches to exist in the prison system of white supremacy, that the churches actually are preaching white nationalism?
Well, when you say the churches, that's real broad and whatnot.
Well, I'm talking about the churches in the system of racism.
Well, everything works to support the system of white supremacy in the system of white supremacy.
Yes,
because you're not outside of it.
Yes,
we're not in a system that's run by anybody other than the white supremacists.
So if
you're a person of color,
okay. So
and proof of it is, if you're talking about any religion, I wouldn't care what kind of religion it is. No religion has proven to be stronger than the religion of white supremacy. I'm talking about proof of strength now.
Okay.
Lots of people say, I got the religion that takes care of everything, that answers all questions and whatnot. And then when the white supremacists come around, in 5 minutes, they say, hey, your religion ain't nothing when it comes to me. I don't care if you're a Hindu and how long you have been it. I don't care if you're a Muslim. I don't care if you're a Christian. I don't care if you're a Jew, a Confucianist, a Buddhist, or any of the tribal religions, of which there are hundreds, I understand.
Yes.
All of you put together bet not get in my face if you got dark skin when you come with it.
Okay.
I'll listen to you if you got a white face, because that means that you're part of my religion anyway, most likely.
Okay.
But if you got color in your skin and you come up with any kind of what you call some kind of religion, I don't care what it is, your religion takes a back seat to anything that I tell you to do.
Okay.
And I prove it within 5 minutes of you talking to me. And if those black people out there who think that your religion is a match for mine, try me.
Okay.
Try me.
In the final...
in a face-to-face, all-out slug-out.
Okay.
Try me.
All right. In the final 3 minutes that we have here, what lessons can be learned from the movie The Imitation of Life?
Oh, I've seen that movie in several versions down through the years. I think Lana Turner was in the latest one that I saw back in the 1950s sometime. I thought the movie had lessons right in your face because it was about race. Any movie about race where somebody mentions race has a lesson in it. And a lot of movies that just have black people in them, the lessons are right there. But most of the movies that I have on my list, many of them, one of the main ones has a black person in it, a person called Sam, that's Casablanca. That's right in your face. But most of the movies that I have on my list of about 40, which I will put on my website sometime when I get it organized, most of the movies don't have any black people or any people of color in them at all.
Mm-hmm.
But the lessons are there because the lessons are there. I look for lessons in any movie or in anything that I'm looking at. When I look out my window, I'm looking for lessons, things that I should know, things that I can learn about. Because existence itself is a movie. If you stop and think about it logically.
So quickly, what one lesson did you learn from that movie, Imitation of Life? Just quickly.
Oh, that, there are black people who try to pass for white, which I already knew about, and it causes confusion.
Okay.
All right? And anytime you have black people who exist, who look like they're white, it causes confusion. I mean, it's not their fault. They haven't done anything. I mean, but the white supremacists are to blame for what? Any confusion that's in the minds of a black person in the system of white supremacy.
All right.
Doesn't make any difference what type of confusion it is. It's the white supremacists who you blame for it.
Okay.
Why? Because they're in charge of all of the non-white people on the planet. Anything that a non-white person is involved in that has an outcome that's not constructive, this is hardcore code.
All
And
right.
I'll finish with this.
Okay.
Hardcore code. Anything that any non-white person is doing anywhere on this planet right now that shouldn't be done, the white supremacists are to blame for it. Why? Because they are in charge of the ship.
Okay.
They're the captains.
We got to leave it there, but Mr. Fuller, thank you so much. Thank you, callers. Thank you, listeners. TalkTameRadio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTameRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com.